Hello, my name is Tanisha Moore. We will be speaking today with experts on the effects of children's exposure to domestic violence. This subject is very close and important to me because along with my siblings and we were victims of being exposed to domestic violence. Just a brief overview of the effects of children's exposure to domestic violence is how it affects them as they get older. Domestic violence is a frequent focus in the media and climbing at an alarming rate. This topic affects children in ways that can lead to issues in their adult lives. Children who are exposed to domestic violence exhibit social, emotional, and cognitive difficulties. The reason it is important is because children exposed to domestic violence are at an increased risk of experiencing emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, of developing emotional and behavioral problems. The issues and controversies with children being exposed to domestic violence is debated if it is considered child abuse or neglect. The questions that typically the experts have received are children who have been exposed to domestic violence prone to committing violent acts, and what psychological effects could children develop if a parent were lost in domestic violence? Could the effects develop and lead into their adult life? Introducing our experts, we have expert number one, April Chris. She has her master's degree. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor. And then we have Deanna Jones, who has her master's degree as well, and she's a licensed clinical social worker. April is a therapist at Inner Peace Counseling in Maryland. She has practiced as a licensed counselor since 2010. Her particular interest is pastoral counseling to include adults, adolescents, children, and families. She has her certifications in mental health counseling and sexual addiction therapy. Deanna Jones has dual specialization in children and families and substance abuse. She has been practicing as a licensed social worker in Maryland since 2001. Her particular counseling interest is to include depression, parenting issues, self-esteem, and emotional behavior issues. So let's go ahead and talk with expert one, who is April Chris. She contributes to the psychological research on children being exposed to domestic violence, doing individual psychotherapy. She discovers new insights about self and how you relate to others. Children who have been exposed to domestic violence tend to act out due to what they were exposed to. Research has shown that children often experience the adverse effects of exposure to domestic violence into adulthood. April recommends ongoing therapy, giving the child or children a chance to talk about their exposure to domestic violence. If you need any more information regarding domestic violence, as far as exposure to children, you can go to the website www.aacap.org. Deanna Jones, who is our next expert, she contributes the psychological research on children's exposure to domestic violence with family counseling and individual counseling. Deanna feels that the child will need to talk about his feelings along with how the family will deal with the child's feelings of being exposed to domestic violence. Her research shows that children exposed to domestic violence are at greater risk of developing attachment disorders and emotional disorders that may have long-term impacts on their success in relationships. The website that Deanna recommends to find more information on domestic violence exposure with children is www.nctsn.org. As far as comparing the two therapists, April, she does individual psychotherapy. She discussed the adverse effects leading into adult life, and she also continues ongoing therapy. I definitely feel that she is more involved and engaging. Deanna Jones, she's individual and a family counseling, and she looks at the at risk of developing attachment and emotional disorders, and she also feels that you must discuss feelings regarding domestic violence. She develops and encourages her clients. Between the two, I think both of them have practice as far as ongoing counseling. And that will end our presentation.